An arriving flight to an American airport leads customer service staff to assign gates and inform incoming international guests to complete arrival/departure records at the counters. Following the usual customs questions, purpose of the visit, duration of stay in the U.S., and checking round-trip tickets, the process is underway. From above, observers check a group of travelers wearing Mickey Mouse shirts from a Beijing flight and are warned they might be using fake documents, leading to a loud, tumultuous mass arrest. Meanwhile, at one of the counters, a man named Viktor Navorsky is being questioned, but he only speaks his native Russian. His passport displays a fail status, so he is escorted away for a security inspection. At a border protection area, Viktor is calmly shaving. When an officer questions him about his purpose for being in the U.S., Viktor pulls out a pre-written piece of paper and recites it from memory. He needs a yellow taxi to go to the hotel address listed on the paper, and that the fare is non-refundable. To every question, Viktor only replies yes. When asked for a round-trip ticket, he can only show a picture of a hotel. When asked to surrender his passport, he reluctantly hands it over. Inside a room, Frank Dixon, the airport security director, is having lunch. He explains that the government of Viktor's home country has had its passport travel privileges temporarily suspended, resulting in the cancellation of Viktor's U.S. entry visa. He further explains that a coup d'état and a serious civil war broke out in his country while Viktor was in the air. When the officer mentions, "your country, Krakozia," Viktor joyfully repeats the name of his homeland in his own language. Realizing Viktor doesn't understand, Frank uses a bag of chips to represent Krakozia and an apple to represent the U.S. to demonstrate a new government has taken over in his country, making his passport and visa invalid. Therefore, Viktor is no longer a citizen of any recognized nation, has no legal rights, and cannot be accepted into the country. Viktor was saying goodbye, about to go on his journey, but was informed that he could neither enter here nor return there, meaning the United States and his home country, yet he was asking where he could buy Nike shoes. So, Viktor, who was not allowed entry into the U.S. and was not detained by customs, was informed that he was free to move within the International Transit Lounge as a free man. He did not seem to understand, but said thank you. After that, the officer, Frank Dixon, informed him that he could freely move around this area, and gave him vouchers to use at the food courts, a 15-minute phone card, and a pager to contact him if needed. He strictly warned Viktor never to step foot through the door there, as that would mean entering the United States, and to remain in the building and go shopping. Viktor, while observing the airport, saw news about his country, Krakozia, which was trying to maintain stability, and saw the news of the deteriorating situation, including the death of the vice president. He frantically ran to get a closer look at the news about his country. The TV upstairs had no sound, so he muttered like a madman and sadly watched the news about his motherland, which was noisy with bombings and gunfire due to a military coup. He was then driven away, being told it was a private room. With news that Krakozia, which was trying to transition from the Soviet communist system, was engulfed in a civil war, Viktor tried to contact home. However, not knowing how to use the phone card, he asked strangers for help. Viktor became isolated, like a man transported to another world. While looking at his food vouchers, he helped a young woman behind him by stepping on her rolling luggage to steady it. The vouchers blew away, and the elderly cleaner, Gupta Rajan, collected them, so Viktor chased after him. The old man told him to come back on Tuesday if he wanted to search his garbage bin. Thus, Viktor was left without food or drink and had to search for a place to sleep. He found an airport building with no one around. He removed the armrests from the uncomfortable chairs, turned off the bright lights, and, clutching the small tin box he carried, tried to sleep. A light from an aircraft made him jump up and yell, "Don't shoot me." Meanwhile, Frank Dixon, hoping to soon get the position of his retiring superior, was telling his staff to pay more attention to the inspections. Therefore, while in the room instructing them to check the background records of the Chinese passengers before deportation, everyone was staring at the CCTV. When he looked, he saw Viktor, the man who was told he was free to stay, walking around in a shower curtain. Viktor continued to do what he needed to do, repeatedly filling out and submitting various applications for a visa, which he could not get, at the counter. However, because his passport had been confiscated, he was not allowed to enter the city, and the officer explained that she couldn't help him get a new passport since he was no longer a citizen of any recognized country. The result of his all-day effort was only another visa rejection, and Frank Dixon kept questioning why he was still there. They didn't understand why Viktor was suffering and staying in the airport as instructed. Although they could legally deport him in about 2 more days, Frank worried, thinking, "I don't know what this man is thinking, and whatever he does will fall on my head." When Viktor went to see the old cleaner on Tuesday, the old man muttered, "I hate Tuesdays," and walked away. Just as Viktor was trying to make do with the crackers he had left since he couldn't buy food, Frank came and took him aside. Frank, as if sharing a secret, told Victor that at 12 o'clock noon, when the guards at that specific door changed shifts, he would have a 5-minute window to enter the United States. This was Frank's scheme, hoping that someone would arrest a man without a visa or passport. He instructed the security guards to leave the area and waited, watching. Frank prayed that Victor would take the chance and leave, staring at the taxis outside the door, and had already alerted the airport police to arrest him the moment he stepped out. However, Victor noticed the CCTV camera moving to follow him. As he bent down, pretending to tie his shoe, he looked back, and when the CCTV quickly turned away, Victor, realizing he was being set up, hid underneath the camera. Victor understood the trick and told Frank that he would just wait here. Later, he helped a young woman who slipped on the clean floor, directing her to her gate and telling her that she could buy a replacement high-heeled shoe at the shop on the second floor. The old cleaner was complaining that Victor must be a Russian spy, and warning the young woman to be careful, believing Victor had put codes in the coupons he gave her. Feeling hungry, Victor was staring at the leftover food in a restaurant when he noticed a woman collecting cards for 25 cents, thus figuring out a way to earn money in the airport. Victor collected every card he could find, and with the money he earned, he was able to buy his first meal at Burger King. As he diligently worked his business and was eating a king-size burger set, he heard the national anthem and looked up at the news. He could only understand enough to read that his country, Krakozia, was running out of water and food during the crisis. This made him start learning English as a serious endeavor. After improving his English, Victor went to the counter for a visa, and the officer asked him why he came to stand in line for 2 hours every day when she couldn't do anything for him. She explained that he couldn't get a visa until the US recognized his country. Victor, however, pointed out that since there were 2 stamps, a red one and a green one, he must have a 50% chance. An office assistant and Frank were watching him. Frank, who disliked seeing Victor survive by earning money with the carts, appointed a commissioner's liaison for passenger support and transport to create a crisis for him, planning to arrest Victor only when he left the airport of his own free will. Victor, trying to sustain himself with his remaining crackers, got ready to greet the girl he had helped when she ran toward him, only to realize she was greeting her boyfriend. When he returned to his resting spot, a young man named Enrique approached him, offering a deal for food. The deal was that Enrique had seen the Customs and Border Protection officer, Dolores Torres, smiling while talking to Victor, and wanted Victor to help him tame this wild horse, Dolores, in exchange for a supply of food. Victor readily agreed. So, Victor went to the officer, Dolores Torres, and, as Enrique had coached him, told her, "You are a beautiful wild horse." He spent the nights relaying what the officer said to Enrique in exchange for food, and giving Enrique information on what the officer liked. The next day, Victor was systematically waiting, while acting as a matchmaker, asking the officer, Dolores, whether she would choose a man with money or a man with love, a question prompted by Enrique. He was also continuing to apply for his perpetually rejected visa. One day, while Victor was talking to Enrique, his pager went off. He went to Frank Dixon, who, still desperate to get Victor out of the airport, explained that Victor could apply for political asylum with the Immigration Service, citing fear of returning to his home country. However, Frank clarified that the courts were backed up on such cases. Frank then told Victor that he could potentially have a 6-month reprieve before getting a judge, and could travel to that very night, but only if he answered one question for him. When Frank asked him if he was afraid to go back to his country, Victor replied that he was not afraid to return to his country, but he was a little afraid of this room, the airport terminal. Now, the old cleaner, Gupta Rajan, who enjoyed watching travelers frequently slip on the floor he just cleaned, commented that in America, people never read the signs and just slip, which he found amusing. Victor overheard a phone conversation nearby where a woman, Amelia Warren, said she had traveled around the world for 27 hours to meet her boyfriend. He went over and offered her a handkerchief as she cried because her boyfriend was prioritizing his wife. She asked if he had a habit of eavesdropping on other people's phone calls. Victor, trying to explain, peeled off a sticker that read "temporarily out of service" from the wall, and she said that all men are liars. She then walked across the wet, mopped floor, and he rushed to stop her. Amelia Warren, the flight attendant, who was talking about her married boyfriend, said she had seen him before. Victor explained that he had given her a coupon to buy shoes. When she asked if he wasn't going home, he looked at a departure sign and replied that he had been delayed for a long time. They introduced themselves. As Victor prepared to leave, Amelia asked if he would like to go out for dinner with her to a good Italian restaurant she knew. Victor, who had neither a wife nor a girlfriend, said he could not leave with her, causing her to feel embarrassed. She warned him to stay away from her and left. Afterward, he asked the Burger King employee how much an Italian pasta dish would cost, and learned it would be about $40 for 2 people. Victor then started looking for jobs to earn money to treat Amelia. However, no one wanted to hire him because he had no personal information or phone number. He gave his address as Gate 67 and provided the number of the nearby payphone. He sat and waited until all the shops closed, not even going to the restroom. When the phone finally rang, the manager of the shop directly in front of him told him that they had already hired someone else for the needed position and he should stop waiting in front of the store. So Victor finally went to the restroom. Upon returning to the rest area, he noticed a freshly painted wall. He found Victor listening to music and working all night. Someone asked who he was, and impressed by his meticulous craftsmanship, told him to start work at 6:30 a.m. on Monday. Having secured a job, Victor finished his shift. He saw a map and a note stuck on the soda machine telling him not to be late. He followed the instructions and found Enrique's group waiting to play cards. The old cleaner, who still suspected Victor was a spy, insisted that Victor was recording everything they said with a voice recorder hidden in his backside. To convince the old man, Victor put himself through the X-ray machine, and only then was he allowed to play cards. They were looking at lost property when they asked what the box Victor always carried with him was. He replied, Jazz Cada, a reference to his true purpose for coming to New York. The next day, he coincidentally ran into Amelia at the bookstore. By a stroke of luck, Amelia began explaining the story of Napoleon, who was defeated at the Battle of Waterloo due to his ego but whose ego also helped him survive. Amelia, who couldn't stand to be alone for even 5 seconds, was frustrated with herself for asking him out for lunch again. Since Victor had no travel plans, he agreed to the lunch date. However, Amelia received a call from her boyfriend and confessed that she felt like she was eating poison, meaning men, that made her sick. Thus, like a story where one person had to leave and the other had to stay, Victor briefly talked to Amelia and had to say goodbye. On the other side, Frank, who was more interested in Victor's salary than learned that Victor was making $19 an hour and muttered that Victor was making more than him. Therefore, Frank set a deadline with a wager to drive Victor out of the airport. He ordered Victor to be brought to him and even tried contacting authorities to send him to a federal prison as an enemy of national security, but they had no empty rooms. Instead, Frank put Victor in a room, a temporary holding cell, to make him lose his job. Subsequently, Frank Dixon, who is managing the American No. 1 airport, is making sure to instruct the staff and is accompanying an inspection team to show them how the airport operates. Coincidentally, he is informed that a problem has arisen upstairs, just as he is receiving praise for the successful capture of heroin from a person carrying chestnuts. The problem involves a person who bought 4 bottles of medicine without a license and is furiously resisting the staff's attempt to confiscate the drugs. Because the man speaks Russian, they go and fetch Victor Navorsky, who is being kept in a locked room for emergency translation, and Victor demands that they grant him a visa to enter LA City. When Victor translates that carrying medicine into the airport requires relevant documents or a license, the man kneels and pleads that the medicine, which he brought all the way from Canada, is for his father. However, Frank adamantly tells him that only the person can go, and the medicine must be left behind. Feeling sorry for the arrested man, Victor lies, saying that the medicine is for goats and that he mistranslated because the words forefather and goat sound similar. Frank, realizing the situation, deduces that Victor did this because he had repeatedly read on the blue paper in the visa office that a license is not required to purchase medicine for animals. Therefore, Frank insists on hearing the truth from the man himself, and the arrested person also confirms that it is for his goats. Consequently, they give him the medicine and let him go. Frank is furious and shouts at Victor, who jokes that he now loves goats even more due to the man who hugged and kissed him, yelling that opposing Victor is opposing America itself. An upper official witnesses this. The story of Victor intervening to help a person because of the medicine spreads among the airport staff, thanks to the talk of the old janitor, and everyone starts treating him like a hero. On the other side, Frank's former superior points out his actions, stating that compassion is the foundation of America, and advises him to follow Victor's example. While contemplating this, a man comes to give him a large fish statuette he won as a gift, and when Frank asks why he wants to go to LA and what is inside the canned food, Victor replies that it is for a promise. Frank, whose image is tarnished, declares that Victor will not be allowed to set foot in LA City as long as he is around, causing the man to take the fish statuette back. That night, Victor enters the data room and checks the file of Amelia Warren, scrutinizing when she will return. Afterwards, he buys a suitable suit and practices the line, "Would you like to eat Italian pasta?" repeatedly before Amelia the flight attendant's plane arrives. When he asks his friend Gupta, Rajan, if he is married, Gupta tells him that he left his wife and children in India and has been working here for 23 years. He also reveals that when he was there, a policeman came to collect taxes on the small cigarette shop he had forgotten about, causing him to flee after pointing a knife at the officer, and he has not returned home since. He adds that he is trying his best not to be deported from America while humbly scrubbing the floors clean. At this time, when the flight from Rome arrives, Amelia is maneuvered onto Victor's lap by his friend's intentional scheme. He asks her out to dinner, mentioning the $150 suit he bought and the Napoleon biography books he bought in advance, which she happily accepts. That night, as they try to host her at the makeshift dinner table they set up, Amelia's pager signals. She explains her past, that she has been keeping her pager on for the phone call she has been waiting for the past 7 years, staying in hotels with a travel bag ready so she can leave immediately once the other party contacts her, and then she departs. Victor mentions that he too has been stranded at this airport for quite some time and has to carry a pager, the source of whose calls he doesn't know. Amelia gets an idea from this, and both of them throw their pagers away and laugh lightheartedly. Victor tells Amelia, who is about to travel for another 13 days, that he has something to tell her when she returns this time, and she kisses him on the cheek as a goodbye. From this time, Cruz approaches Victor, who is busy with tasks involving deconstruction and breaking things. Cruz offers to treat Victor to a feast until he throws up if Victor helps him with one thing. Victor agrees to take a small box to Torres, who is always refusing Cruz. Inside the box is a ring, and Cruz tells him he will wait until Torres' shift ends. Cruz waits nervously in the almost empty airport. Torres arrives wearing the ring, thanks to Victor, and a wedding takes place inside the airport. On the day Amelia returns to the airport, officials take her away, saying they have some questions for her. Victor, waiting with a bouquet, is troubled, and Frank, who intentionally called Amelia in, tells her to help him find out about Victor. Frank wants to know where Victor came from, why he is here, and what is inside the canned food, a can of Planters peanuts. When Frank asks why Amelia chose Victor when she could choose any man, she replies that someone like him would not understand. Afterward, Amelia approaches Victor, who is wandering with the bouquet, and says all men lie, but Victor is not very good at it. When Victor says he is not lying, Amelia asks if his flight has really been delayed for 9 months. She tells him that she came to let him know that she is now a free person and is no longer waiting for the previous man. As she prepares to leave, Victor says he has something to show her and reveals 1,000 fountains, a gift Napoleon gave to his wife. Victor explains that despite preparing it meticulously for 13 days, no water comes out. Amelia then asks if he is a criminal or if he is running from some organization and living at the airport. In response, Victor shows her the can from his bag and says it's his father, causing Amelia to caution him not to say his father is inside the can. He then shows a magazine photo from 1958 and explains that his father, who sat watching this photo for 7 straight days, wrote letters every year to the 57 members of the Great Day in Harlem Jazz photo. Every member sent back their signature, but the last one had not, so Victor came to America to fulfill his promise to his father. He tells her that just like she was waiting for something, he, too, was waiting for her. They share their first kiss in front of the fountain he personally fixed. The next day, Cruz and others wake Victor up and tell him the war has ended. That day is the happiest day for Victor. When he excitedly tells Amelia, who has arrived with her luggage, that Cracovia is at peace, she celebrates again, saying a friend helped her get a one-day city visit visa, and now she can go get the final signature. A moment later, Victor asks why her friend helped him, and Amelia replies that her friend was helping her, asking if he didn't understand why she always warned him to stay away from her. When he asks why she is suddenly leaving his life when things were going well, she says the gift Napoleon gave his wife was a gold locket inscribed with the word destiny. While Victor repeats the word destiny over and over, Amelia leaves with her ex-boyfriend. Victor goes to Torres with his one-day exit visa, but Torres tells him the visa is genuine but still requires the supervisor's signature. He goes to Frank, who asserts his authority at the airport, hands Victor his plane ticket and passport back, and orders him to go home. Victor bravely tells Frank that he needs a ticket to go into the city. However, Frank threatens to deport his friends in the airport from the country, so Victor agrees to go home. Cruz and his friends bid farewell to Victor, but the elderly janitor, Gupta, asks why Victor doesn't confront those men and just pass through the gates. The officer accompanying Victor explains the whole story because the janitor is accusing Victor of being a coward for not being able to go to another place, despite having made it all the way to America. Frank is savoring his coffee and watching the plane to Cracovia depart. When he hears a commotion in the airport, he goes out and sees the elderly janitor with a broom, running toward the plane bound for Cracovia. The janitor runs and hits the front wheel of the airplane with his broom, then turns to Victor and tells him to go to the city during the delayed flight time, saying he is leaving for India. He then asks the surrounding guards, who are pointing guns at him, if they have an appointment. Cruz and the others rally behind Victor as he walks, and airport employees rush to give gifts to Victor, who is about to go to the city. However, officers are waiting at the gate and tell him this is the way to America and he should turn back, while also putting his coat on him because it is snowing outside. No one pays attention to Frank, who is yelling from the control room, and they tell Victor not to get stranded where he is going. As he steps through the open door, Victor takes a deep breath of the outside air, which he hasn't experienced in many days. Amelia, who has arrived on duty, smiles and waves goodbye to Victor, who is hailing a taxi. Frank angrily descends into the airport, but Victor has already hired a car driven by a Russian and left for his desired address, causing Frank to give up and simply order services to be provided for the next arriving flight's passengers. Victor arrives at the hotel from the address and finds out there is a jazz band playing that night. He explains his situation to the saxophone player on stage and asks for an autograph, which is given to him along with free admission to the show. Having finally gotten the signature as promised to his father, Victor hails a taxi and says contentedly that he is going home, and the story ends.